I stared at my reflection in the mirrored walls of the elevator, lightly adjusting the lapel of the $80 navy blazer I'd snagged from a clearance rack at Macy's. It was one of those quick buys meant to look sharp under dim lighting, even if the fabric wrinkled the moment I sat down. In less than 5 minutes, I'd be walking into another soul-draining Langford family dinner, one more evening of fake smiles and polite nods, while my siblings paraded their latest trophies, never realizing how little they understood about the world, or me. The elevator gave a crisp chime as it reached the rooftop lounge of Halston Reserve, one of Baltimore's most exclusive private clubs. Through the glass doors, the Langfords were already seated at the long table near the window, my family, in every legal sense, and yet somehow strangers to the life I actually lived. Known around the city for their real estate empire and their uncanny ability to equate status with virtue, the Langfords were local royalty. Well, well, my older sister Caroline called out as I approached. Her voice was sweetened with condescension, her French manicured fingers brushing imaginary lint from her cream-colored blazer. Hermes, of course. Look who finally made time for us. Had to squeeze us in between. What is it you do again? Answer phones at that little office of yours. I slid into the empty seat beside Charles Langford Sr., my father, who offered a wordless glance at my scuffed heels. His silence said everything. Sorry, I murmured, unfolding my napkin. Late wrap-up at work. You're still in admin, right? My younger brother Logan asked with a smirk, his Rolex catching the light as he raised his whiskey glass. Invoices, scheduling, whatever it is they've got you doing. Something like that, I said, with just enough neutrality to mask the truth. My actual title, CEO and founding partner of Vanguard North Capital. But that wasn't information they were entitled to. Not yet. My father sighed a heavy theatrical exhale that seemed like it had been rehearsed for the occasion. Avery, you're 34. Don't you think it's time you stopped wasting your potential? Caroline is managing our entire Florida portfolio. Logan just closed a $10.5 million listing on the Harborfront condos. And I'm keeping the lights on, I said with a gentle smile, sipping from my water, as if I hadn't just brokered a tech acquisition that morning. Caroline leaned in with the kind of glow reserved for headlines. You're going to love tomorrow's big announcement, she said. Langford Holdings is partnering with Belcroft Ventures. It's a $40 million deal. The CEO is flying in personally to sign. I stirred my drink slowly, carefully hiding the twitch in my mouth. Belcroft was mine. Every detail, every clause, every late-night negotiation, my fingerprints were on all of it. We've been grinding away at this for months, Logan added, nodding proudly. They're sending someone named, what was it? Morgan West. Never heard of her, Caroline chimed in, her tone dripping with dismissal. Probably some glorified assistant who networked her way into a boardroom. I met their gazes evenly. You'll get to meet her soon. They laughed, genuine in their ignorance, and toasted to another successful Langford legacy milestone. Meanwhile, I mentally reviewed the final items on tomorrow's meeting agenda, the one where they'd unknowingly ask me to save their company. They called me the black sheep of the family. Always had, still did. But after tomorrow, they'd call me boss. I had simply seen opportunities they were too entitled or too blind to notice. Years ago, the AI startup I worked for, Horizon Logic, had jaw-dropping potential but was financially sinking. Most investors passed. I watched, listened, and when the moment was right, I stepped in, quietly, carefully. Using the modest savings they used to mock and the financial records I knew how to read, I bought a controlling stake for pennies on the dollar. The founders were brilliant minds who hated business. All they wanted was to build. I let them. In under 2 years, Horizon Logic became the foundation of Vanguard North, a hybrid tech investment firm now ranked among the top private equity companies in the U.S. And no one, not even my family, had the faintest clue it was me behind it all. I kept it that way on purpose. Shell corporations, anonymous trusts, board meetings through encrypted video calls, voice masking. While Caroline flaunted gala gowns and Logan posted penthouse views on Instagram, I quietly bought controlling interest in over 60 companies, some of which had directly outbid Langford Holdings on major property acquisitions. Still, I never upgraded my lifestyle. I lived in a modest 2-bedroom walk-up in Mount Vernon. I drove the same beat-up Civic I'd had since college. Because success doesn't need an audience. It just needs results. A waiter broke my thoughts with another round of cocktails. And right on cue, my mother Vivian Langford shifted the topic to her favorite subject, my unpolished appearance. You know, Avery, if you just made an effort, got a proper haircut, wore something less clearance rack, you might actually attract a decent man. Caroline's smirk sharpened. James and I are hosting the Silver Horizon Gala next month. $3,000 a plate. But don't worry, we'll make sure you don't feel too out of place. Logan laughed. I thought of the stack of invitations on my desk at home, each one addressed to CEO Vanguard North. The gala organizers were practically begging me to attend. I'm not unhappy, I said quietly, slicing into my steak with calm precision. Success doesn't look the same for everyone. My father scoffed. That's what people who don't succeed tell themselves. Then Caroline perked up again, suddenly remembering. Oh, that tiny startup you worked for, guess who just bought them Bellcroft Ventures? Crazy, right? Logan laughed. If only you'd stayed Avery, you might have actually been part of something big. I dabbed my lips with my napkin, suppressing the grin rising in my chest. Yes, I said, raising my glass. Just imagine that. Avery, my mother added, they say the CEO of Bellcroft is brilliant, ruthless, private, the kind of success you'll never understand. I nodded, sipping slowly. Here's to surprises. Aniste? The CEO of Vanguard North is flying in tomorrow. Caroline announced, her voice laced with performative pride, chin tilted like she was delivering a royal decree. They're incredibly selective with their partnerships. The fact that they chose Langford Holdings. It says something. It does, I murmured, eyes drifting down to my phone beneath the white linen-draped table. A new email had just arrived, urgent, flagged by my CFO. Another acquisition. A tech firm in San Diego, the kind of deal that would send ripples through the industry and headlines across the coast. A deal Caroline couldn't even begin to imagine. Before I could fully absorb the details, Vivian's voice cut across the clinking glasses and ambient piano. Put that away, Avery. Honestly, it's not like anything important is coming through. Show some manners. If only she knew I was finalizing a 9-figure merger, with implications that would reshape not just one company, but 3 entire sectors. But I merely nodded, slipping the phone back into my purse without a word. Let them believe what they want. That had been my strategy for years, and tomorrow it would finally pay off. Dinner unfolded in its usual performance. Logan bragged about his growing real estate portfolio. Caroline gushed about her upcoming charity gala, and my parents sat beaming with practiced pride at their so-called successful children. I, as ever, played the role they had written for me, the overlooked, the underachiever, the polite disappointment. But beneath my calm expression, I could already see the ink drying on the contracts that would rewrite this story. The signing was scheduled for 10 sharp the next morning in the gleaming downtown offices of Langford Holdings. Caroline had pursued the deal for nearly a year, completely unaware that she'd been negotiating through intermediaries with the very sister she constantly belittled and dismissed. The irony was exquisite. As the check arrived, Caroline leaned in for one last parting jab. Don't worry, Avery. Maybe one day you'll get to vacation at one of my resorts. I'll even let you use the family discount. I smiled, picturing the deed to my cliffside estate in Big Sur, purchased outright untouched by renters or guests. That's generous of you, Caroline. Logan tossed down his black Amex, puffed up with pride. Next round's at my new penthouse, he added with a wink. Fair warning, though, it might make some of us feel a little underdressed. I reached for my well-worn tote bag and stood. Good luck tomorrow, I said, smooth as silk. I hope everything goes just as planned. Caroline smirked, flicking her curls over her shoulder. Some of us can handle real business. Just make sure your little office gig doesn't make you late. I walked past their line of luxury vehicles, Caroline's polished Mercedes, Logan's custom matte BMW, toward my parked Honda Civic. It didn't matter. Tomorrow, I'd arrive in a Rolls-Royce Phantom with a contract that would redefine everything. But tonight I went back to my modest apartment, powered up my secure workstation, and quietly closed another multi-million-dollar deal. Because real power doesn't strut. It doesn't beg for recognition. It builds relentlessly, invisibly, until the moment no one can ignore it. What happens when the so-called black sheep walks into the boardroom as the decision-maker? You'll want to see it. Don't blink. Everything's about to change. That morning I didn't pull clearance rack slacks from a hanger. I stepped into my real wardrobe, a navy blue cashmere suit, hand-tailored in Hong Kong, worth more than Caroline's car. Miles, my assistant, had already confirmed every logistical detail. Today wouldn't just be business, it would be history. The lobby of Langford Holdings buzzed with its usual energy, polished, performative, entitled. Until I stepped through the revolving doors at precisely 9:55 a.m., and then silence. Gone was the woman in the wrinkled blazer and budget heels. In her place strode a woman in 6-inch Louboutins, a silk blouse the color of moonlight, and a presence that rippled through the room like a seismic wave. Behind me, Miles walked at a respectful distance, carrying a Mont Blanc leather briefcase that cost more than Logan's car payments. The front desk receptionist blinked recognition, fighting with disbelief. "Miss Langford?" he said slowly, his voice uncertain. "I don't... See you on the visitor list today." "Check again," I replied calmly. "Under Vanguard North." His brow creased, then shot upward as my name registered on the screen under VIP clearance. He swallowed. "Of course, Miss Langford. Executive elevator is this way." Every eye in the lobby followed me. Each step of my heels echoed like a metronome, counting down to revelation. The elevator ride to the top floor was quiet, just me, Miles, and the invisible weight of 7 years of silent strategy and sacrifice. Through the glass walls of the boardroom, I saw them. Caroline pacing in her off-brand suit, ironic considering Vanguard North now owned the licensing rights to that very designer. Logan sat at the conference table, fiddling with his tie like he always did when his nerves frayed. My parents sat at the head, their faces glowing with anticipation, clueless to the storm about to arrive. "They're expecting the CEO of Vanguard North at 10 sharp," Miles whispered, checking his watch. "Are you ready?" I smiled, cool, composed, unshakable. "I've been ready for 7 years." At exactly 10 a.m., Miles opened the boardroom door. Conversation died mid-sentence. 4 sets of eyes turned toward me, their expressions morphing in an instant from confusion to disbelief, from irritation to horror. Avery Caroline gasped, her voice sharp with shock. "What are you doing here?" Charles Langford Sr. sat up straighter. "We're about to have an important meeting," he said, tone-clipped. "I know," I replied, stepping inside with the confidence of someone who no longer needed their approval. "That's why I'm here." Vivian narrowed her eyes, suspicion cutting across her brow. "This isn't the time for stunts, Avery." I calmly placed the briefcase on the glass table, clicked it open, and slid the contract across the table to my father. "It's not a stunt," I said smoothly. "The CEO of Vanguard North is already here." Silence enveloped the room like a weighted shroud. My mother's hand flew to her throat, her fingers clutching at the strand of pearls that had anchored her composure for decades. Connor looked like a fish gasping for air, his mouth opening and closing, soundless and stunned. "What kind of joke is this?" Caroline snapped, her carefully measured voice splintering under pressure. "Where's the actual CEO?" I smiled, unhurried and steady, and slid a single business card across the glass table. Ivory cardstock, thick as trust mat finish, nothing flashy, just black ink in classic serif, Avery Langford, founder and CEO, Vanguard North Capital. Charles snatched it up, and the color drained from his face, replaced by a shade of plum that clashed violently with his navy blazer. "This is impossible. Vanguard is worth billions. You're just what I asked," my tone smooth, unwavering. "An underachiever, a disappointment. The black sheep you so love to dismiss." Miles stepped forward and began distributing crisp packets of documentation, the final investment agreement in full. They were bound in soft navy folders embossed with the Vanguard seal. "Your legal team will want to review Section 8.4 thoroughly," I added. "It outlines our conditions regarding management compliance. Very specific, very binding." Caroline yanked her copy open, pages fluttering under trembling fingers. "This can't be real," she muttered. "You work in admin. You process invoices." "Actually," I said, folding my hands, my voice calm and clinical, "I haven't processed an invoice in over 7 years. I've been running Vanguard since I acquired Horizon Logic, the AI firm I once worked for. It was collapsing. I saved it. And since then, I've acquired dozens more, including as of last week the entire East Coast division of Crestmark Financial." Logan collapsed into a chair, his face pale, jaw slack. "That penthouse you've been flaunting," I turned to him. "It was financed through one of my subsidiaries. I approved the budget personally." Vivian finally broke her silence, her voice threadbare. "But your apartment, your clothes, that car, all part of the plan," I replied. "Not everyone needs to broadcast success. Some of us build in silence and let our results speak louder than ego ever could." Charles's voice dropped into something low, bitter, wounded. "Why this secrecy? Why not tell us?" I stood slowly, smoothing the line of my tailored skirt. "Because you never respected what you couldn't control. You'd have meddled, minimized, tried to twist it into something that made you feel superior." I placed a pen beside the contract. "Now, shall we discuss the terms of Vanguard's $60 million investment into Langford Holdings? It's quite a lot of money. I suggest we go over what exactly you're agreeing to." Caroline's skin had gone sallow, her voice cracked. The negotiations. I've been speaking with you this whole time. I nodded. Through intermediaries. Though to be fair, your initial terms were absurd. Fortunately, I already had access to the real numbers. What followed was an hour of exquisite torment for them. I guided them through the contract clause by clause, pausing deliberately at the parts that stung the most. The $60 million wasn't just an investment, it was a lifeline. Their debts had stacked like cards in a gust of wind, collapsing faster than their PR campaigns could mask. They were drowning, and I was the only one offering oxygen. There are conditions, I said, flipping to the last page, namely a restructure. Caroline, you'll be stepping down as project lead. Her lips parted in protest, eyes wide. You can't. This is my project. Actually, I can. And it's my project now. Just like the last 3 you took credit for. All funded by my firms. I turned to Logan. As for your so-called real estate empire, those loans you've been hiding, Vanguard now owns the debt. Which means you work for me. Charles surged from his seat, voice booming. Now listen here, Avery, this is outrageous. You can't just... And yet I cut in my voice like ice I have. Vanguard isn't just some shell company. We have holdings in over 60 major firms. Langford Holdings, a footnote. Silence flooded the room. Caroline's shoulders shook. Vivian sat slumped, her poise shattered. Logan stared down at the pages, numb. Finally, Charles picked up the pen. His signature trembled. One by one they signed. Miles gathered the contracts. I stood slipping on my coat. I have another meeting across town. You can see yourselves out. This office, it looks like a glorified storage unit next to mine. I paused at the door. Miles will walk you through the transition. Oh, and Caroline about that gala next month. Don't worry about my invitation. She blinked. What? I bought the venue last year. Actually, I own most of the properties where your events are held. Funny how that works. The ride back to Vanguard's real headquarters was quiet, reflective. Their stunned faces had been satisfying, but this wasn't about vengeance. It was about freedom. A text from Vivian lit up my phone. Why didn't you tell us? I stared out the window at the Baltimore skyline. Because you wouldn't have believed me. You only respect power when it's served cold and undeniable. In the months that followed, the fallout was swift. Caroline was reassigned a graceful demotion. Her projects now bore the proper credit. Logan's properties folded under Vanguard's restructuring division. His debts absorbed, his authority stripped. My parents rewrote history. They always knew I was gifted, they told friends. They spoke in glowing terms about their mysterious billionaire daughter. I let them. It cost me nothing. I kept my modest apartment for balance. Donated the Civic to a women's shelter. My real homes, including the penthouse atop Vanguard Tower, remained my sanctuary. Our next family dinner? It happened in my executive suite 60 floors above their world. They marveled at the skyline, the curated art, the quiet power. I lifted a glass of wine worth more than Caroline's monthly wardrobe. Success isn't about what you flaunt, I said, voice soft but unshakable. It's about what you build when no one's watching. No one replied. For once, the black sheep had silenced the flock. And the real twist, I still shop at Target. Because real power doesn't need validation, it simply is. If you've ever been dismissed because you didn't fit their mold, because of your job, your car, your silence, leave a comment. Tell your story. I'm listening. And if this spoke to you, if it echoed something you felt but never said, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. Not just to support the channel, but to help others find a story that reminds them they're not alone. Not for the drama, but for the truth that sometimes the ones they doubt the most are the ones quietly building empires. So build anyway, quietly, relentlessly, in your own way.